Disclaimer: I do not own anything I show, nor am I an expert on the stuff that I'm talking about. Hello, Marco again, and in this week's video I'm going to give you some recommendations for some good fanfics. And for who don't know what a fanfic is, this is going to be a short explanation. A fanfic is a story written about a popular franchise like a cartoon show, a series of books, or a video game. These stories aren't canon, which means they aren't part of the original story. Disclaimer: just because I like these fanfics doesn't mean that you have to like them too. These are just some of my personal favorites. And not all of them are completed or ever will be completed, but it doesn't mean that they aren't worth reading. This is how I'm going to do this. 1. I'm going to give you the name of the story and its author and on the franchise on which it's based. 2. Why I chose this story. 3. I'm going to give you a summary of the story. 4. What makes this story worth reading. The first story I'm going to talk about is Kung Fu Panda 2099, written by Monkey Cyborg Ninja and based on DreamWorks' Kung Fu Panda. I chose this fanfic because I named it in 2 earlier videos and gave a very basic summary back then. But I think it's best to give a full summary of this fanfic because it's a very good story. Now I'm going to give the summary. Several thousands of years in the future, compared to the original movie, in the year 2099, yes, I see the Marvel reference, in the City of Prosperity, a young parkour enthusiast / science nerd, Darvel Richine, finds out that he is the Dragonborn. Oops, sorry, I meant the Dragon Warrior, and that it is his job to save China from an ancient enemy. Initially he doesn't want to, but after some convincing from his father, he is sort of willing to try Kung Fu. Now he trains with the Furious 5 of 2099 to stop the ancient evil and save China. Why you should read this. This is a great fanfiction that takes inspiration from the first movie. The person who wrote it started writing after the first movie came out, so no references to the second or third. This also takes great inspiration from the Marvel 2099 comics, but you can read that in the title. This story also adds many great things like great character, a romance story that isn't too dominating, that's a huge problem with fanfics, a great classical villain, and great fights that you must read and picture out in your head. That's how reading works, people. These are the reasons why every Kung Fu Panda fan should read this. The second fanfic I've chosen to recommend is Jana vs. the Force of Evil, written by Jason Feldor and based on the Star vs. Force of Evil cartoon. This is one of the more recently made fanfics I've chosen and isn't finished yet, but what's written so far is very good and makes me longing for more. This fanfic also gives a very interesting spin on the Star vs. Force of Evil cartoon, which is very good and you should watch if you want to understand the story. This fic follows almost every episode of the original show, but gives it its own original spin, and that's why I chose this story. Now I'm going to give a summary. In this story, Star never came to Earth, but her book did. Her book ended up in the hands of Echo Creek's own troublemaker and self-proclaimed mystic, Jana. Now, Jana and her Safe Kid friend and / Karate Kid friend, Marco Diaz, must solve Echo Creek's problems, almost all caused by Jana herself, fight Ludo's minions, learn how the book came to Earth, and also learn how to use the book's magic. What makes this story worth reading? What makes this story worth reading is that it gives an interesting spin on the original series, has some great humor, the characters act like they would do in the show, and has a great mystery of how the book came to Earth, and the question of where is Star? If you are a fan of Star vs. the Force of Evil and want to read a good alternate universe fanfiction, this is the fanfiction you want. The last story I'm going to talk about is Pearl in World War II, written by Pinhead78, based on the Steven Universe show. I chose this story because of its historic background and the human history it tells. It shows an immortal fictional character in the horrors of World War II and what it can do to a person. Now the last summary. This story is about what the crystal gems, but mostly pearl, did during the Second World War. It tells the story of how Pearl fought during the Second World War without her gem weapons. It shows Pearl's memories of the past of the crystal gems, protecting the Tibetan temple, of Pearl joining the British Army, her mission in Poland, and all the other missions that she did during the Second World War, and much more that hasn't been written yet. Why you should read this story. Although I know Rebecca Sugar said that in Steven Universe there never was a Second World War, this is still an amazing story, because it gives the crystal gems a connection with our human history. The author also tries to stay as accurate as possible with the historic events and people, as accurate as possible can be with adding crystal gems into the story, and also adds the historic references at the end of every chapter. This is why this is an amazing story. These were my recommendations for fanfics to read. And like I said in the disclaimer, I do not own any of the franchise of which I'm showing pictures, and just because I like these stories doesn't mean that you have to like them. I hope you like my video, and please like and subscribe.